We're going to move into a reading from David Bateman and his book, A Mad Bent Diva. David, come on up and join us on stage and give us a reading. No, you're here. I'll share the mic with you for it. I just wanted to put my my arm on David and thank him for his wonderful book. His manuscript came to me, and I just decided I had to publish this man's work. There are totally funky stories in here. There are some sad stories, there are some happy stories, and that's about all I'm going to say about it, and I'm just happy to have you up here. Thanks.
Thank you. When Ty first asked me to submit a manuscript, he said he was looking for funky work, and I know what that means. So I sent him a funky manuscript. But before, thank you, Jane. That was... I can't describe, I was crying all through it, so I can't,
Your book?
No, Jane singing. Everything in the book is about, anyway. And Bridget and Kathleen, all this incredibly powerful work. I was very honored to be able to help both Kathleen and Bridget bring their work to this launch, and even though their work has been in many places already, but it's great to see it in this form. And before Mary Margaret comes up, thank you for coming as well. And I'm sorry Theodore couldn't make it, but I just read his book yesterday. I thought I'd better read it before the launch. And I loved it. It's a beautiful book. It's about Greece and Cyprus and many different places. Ty asked us to only read excerpts, but sorry, I'm not going to do that. Because my work is almost like flash fiction. It's like most of the stories are 2 pages long. So because it's your fault, Ty, because I am going to read the story that you said was the reason you published the book. But memory is amazing. We all remember things differently than we all think we're right. So my version of the story is I read this piece at a launch of an anthology that Ty published, and the launch was on the Danforth. Luckily, I could afford a token that day, or I would have had to walk. He heard me read for a friend who was too nervous to read, and she said, "If you read for me, you can read one of your stories." And this is the story I read, which used to be a poem, and Ty mentioned it at the beginning. He said because it's about tampons, so he had to publish a story about tampons, which I guess in Ty's wonderful lexicon of literature, that's funky. And Jane talked about the curse, so it seems like a perfect piece to read. Anyway, where was I? So I read, and this piece is called Tampak's Tale, and because it's so short, I'm just going to read the whole damn thing. Tampak's was always something tucked in a paper bag that my mother folded, slid into my pants pocket early 1960s, and said, "Give this to the cashier, sweetheart, then tell her to read the note inside, but don't look at it yourself, and don't open the bag once she has filled it for you." I don't know if my mother ever figured out that I can't keep secrets. And when someone tells me not to do something, I just do it. It was a short walk from our house to the pharmacy in the strip mall by the bowling alley past the barber shop with glimpses of those hot Italian barbers, the Atlas brothers, with their beautiful hairy necks, sometimes shaven clean, sometimes rippled with feathery waves of thin heavenly grasses over the edge of their white barber collars, like slender black reeds on taut, marshy seas of flesh like an acre of night in the eyes of a curious child exploring heaven's cellar, like a forest of poetry etched and swaying at the nape. Against dew-dark skin, sweet, swarthy, sexy haiku, braying, boyish lust. Hushed by my timid manner, I saw their necks like I saw Tampax. Sights of desire I didn't understand, yet lurking in secret spaces I was trusted with. They would cut my hair, sit me high on a flat-bottomed wooden hobby horse that didn't rock, lifting my little 7-year-old frame toward their manly scissors. One day I was told to fill my mother's secret Tampax order after my haircut was done. Phil Atlas raised me high out of the hobby horse's saddle. I pulled the money out of my pocket and the folded paper bag fell on the floor. The words scribbled on the little square of paper, Tampax. Phil Atlas bent over and picked it up and said, "Hey, what you got in there, little fella?" I looked at the word and silently moved my lips to the shape of those unlikely syllables, Tampax. Through the eyes and the larynx of a syllabically challenged child, Tampax made me think of Ajax, a little town near where I live. And I also knew that it was the name of a cleaning product named after a Greek hero. I wanted to sound smart and confident in front of that sexy barber, so I said, it's Tampax for my mom. I get it for her all the time. I think it comes from Ajax and it's named after a handsome Greek man. The three other barbers and their patrons all looked up, startled, uncomfortable, and laughing. I was a timid child, blonde and small, and a no match for all the testosterone assembled in that barbershop that day. Phil Atlas had always lifted me into the hobby horse harness, but this day was a turning point. I was getting a little big for the lift, and from that day on, he let me get in and out all by myself. And he wasn't as friendly as he'd always been. My mother also noticed that he wasn't friendly to her anymore, and didn't comment on the nice new hot pants outfits she was wearing like he used to when she first became a widow. My mother, she always looked so fresh and lovely in those gauzy, translucent shorts and matching top, all in yellow and white with soft patches of shadowy gray. I grew up fascinated with my mother's body, her fashion choices, and men's hairy necks, and how sleek and lovely they looked when they trimmed the hair at the crest of their shoulders. And my father's hairless chest was always a map of the world for me on Sunday mornings. Crawling into bed with my parents and peering over the sleek, exposed mounds of his upper torso, enchanted by geography I had yet to navigate and conquer, and the lacy edges of my mother's aquamarine nightgown, frill and brawn inhabiting my little head, like myth and story at such a tender age, like Greek gods and the young men and older women who must have loved them. I think it all just made me want to have sex with men named Ajax. And women with secret folded notes in barber shops filled with laughter aimed at childish mythological stories about Tampax and memories of how my mother bathed me with her when I was small enough to fit in the same bathtub. Her perfect breasts were like those shaved next to me. It all just meshed together with thoughts of beautiful Italian barbers glaring at me as my waifish body grew out of equine child seats, but never growing into manhood until I was middle-aged. Forever, that little boy, sent on his own to play with adults, but never given proper instructions, just notes folded into flattened paper bags, and men who would never love me the way I dreamed Greek heroes would. Sometimes it only gets better when we unfold those notes ourselves and refuse to keep secrets and do what we are told not to, and learn to love women bathing us like goddesses, half afraid but terribly curious, in a Greek tragedy kind of way, of what we might find within the luscious, folded layers of all these mythological bodies. I'll see what Ty, I think I've got a bit of time left, so I'll do what Ty asked you, which is good. To try to sell the book, we read you an excerpt, and then you have to buy the book to, but you all have one, but anyway, but you can buy many more. Oh, by the way, A Mad Bent Diva, the title of the book, is my name, David Bateman, as an anagram. And I was like in my mid-40s, and I only discovered that because I was at a poetry reading at Gabriola Island, and a wonderful queer artist who introduced all of the writers, introduced us by making anagrams out of our name, and he said, David Bateman, A Mad Bent Diva, and I thought, oh fuck, why didn't I think of that? And then I realized, and I was in New Orleans a number of years before, and I was buying a little bracelet with words, the letters, the rhinestone letters from my name, and as I assembled them, I thought, I'm in my 40s and I didn't know that my name spelled backwards is Diva? The most obvious things in life come as such a surprise when your life is almost over. Perfect. So thank you to Jacob Peros, who is no longer with us. He is, as they say, in a much better place, but I don't know how we could be in a better place than we are today, but I hope you're here listening, Jacob. This poem I want to read, James, I don't know what the poem, your beautiful piece of musical poetry was based on, but the name Morag, of course, is the name of the central character in Margaret Lawrence's The Diviners. Yeah. And I have a couple of references to Margaret, so buy the book if you want to see the picture close up of me shaking Margaret Lawrence's hand when she was the Chancellor of Trent University when I was like 24, which seems like about 35 years ago, which is exactly what it was. I don't think of life as short. I think of it as very, 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 very long, but I'm one of the lucky ones. So I wrote this story. It's a letter to Margaret Lawrence, and I'll just read you a little bit of it. I'll just set it up a little. There's a I love all of her. I love her stories. I love her books. I've read most of her books. When she lived in the Peterborough area at Lakefield, at the end of the Trent-Severn Waterway, as the Chancellor of Trent University. The first, as far as rumor has it, that the first line of her book, The Diviners, was "The river flows both ways." And although she was writing about parts of Manitoba, the story is that she was seeing the river that was industrialized and unfairly populated by settlers, ruining Aboriginal land. Many years ago, it was turned into a waterway, a canal system, which is really, really horrific and unfriendly. But because of that lift lock and because of that waterway, the river, when you look at the river, it looks like it's running in two directions because of the way the water has been tamed. So I'm basically writing this letter thanking Margaret Lawrence for all of the amazing stories that she wrote and the wonderful novels she wrote. And I'll just read the last part of it, which may make no sense at all. But after 2 martinis, who cares? I'll start with the quote from Margaret Lawrence when she said, this was from her book, I think a memoir, Dance on the Earth. And it seems so fitting after an incredible afternoon of all these incredibly talented artists, women, performing for us. And Margaret Lawrence said, women, as well as men in all ages and in all places, have danced on the earth. Danced the life dance, danced joy, danced grief, danced despair, danced hope, literally and metaphorically, by their very lives. So then I end the letter, and I've compared Margaret Lawrence to Jacqueline Suzanne, another incredibly underestimated writer who is considered someone who wrote kind of purple prose. She wrote Valley of the Dolls, which was turned into film, but she wrote, when you look at their work together, which this story does, it's actually quite beautiful, and they're not all that different from the way in which Margaret was writing about love. So at the end of the letter I say to Margaret Lawrence, but now I'm old, and I'm happy to be old. As your writing still tracks my every move in narrative that enfolds me. I have kept that early 80s photo of you shaking my hand at 24, you in your chancellor's gown, me in my trendy plastic shoes. Lithe, pleated, pale gray, dove-like trousers, my full blonde wedge at graduation. I read so much into that fleeting snapshot, meeting your knowing smile that carries me on verbose wings through these cliched stanzas, worlds of love for people and the objects we adore and covet as bodies and emotions fail us. Now, in a century you never inhabited, but in which you have given us so much to those of us moving through the organized mess of faintly nurturing late capitalist madness, having lived in a downtown co-op. I live in a co-op called the Margaret Lawrence Co-op, which is a very strange coincidence. A downtown co-op named after you for 25 years, half imagining a large framed black and white print of us as a photographic homage in the foyer encased with plexiglass boxes alongside your pages, folded back, highlighted in pink felt-tipped fury. My grandmother used to go to the local churches in Peterborough where they would put a picture, they would photocopy the stanzas of Margaret Lawrence's book so people could read them and be disgusted by them, because it was the period when her books were being banned in Peterborough County. So this is basically my response saying to those censorship of that time, fuck you. How I have never fought for anything here among these sanitized corridors of barely affordable housing until well-meaning, misguided zealots tried to take your name away from this co-op that I have treasured for so long. They pleaded with the pithy aid of PowerPoint plotting in the classist name of, we don't want the stigma of living in a government-subsidized building, so let's just change the sign and we can tell that famous lady writer she can have a plaque in the lobby. I actually lobbied against that, and luckily it was overturned, so it's still called the Margaret Lawrence Co-op. But on the banks of currents I was weaned on running every which way, back and forth through treacherous taming locks on stolen land with bridges, fields, and mangled lakes. There you were, blessing my life for so long in the pages, the church foyers, and the minds of beloved maternal grandmothers hell-bent on ingesting your gorgeous garishness, then brandishing unfit. It's all behind us now, so please, Margaret, stop following me. Rest. Find the places that the people that you created never found. Rest. I can carry what is left of me from here to there. Rest. Stop following me. Rest. You have given me everything I need to rest. And I'll just finish with one very short piece. It's a song, but I don't know how Elaine Stritch do it, but I can't sing after 2 martinis. So I'll give it a kind of lyrical chant. I only want to acquaint you with this because the last 13 little pieces of flash fiction in the book are called Suicide Notes. It tries to be an upbeat. On New Year's Eve a few years ago, I've never felt suicidal, but I've thought about the idea of feeling suicidal. And I started thinking around midnight on New Year's Eve a few years ago of all the people that I know who have succeeded or failed at suicide, which is difficult, because what is a success? When you try to, is it failing? When you attempt your life? Because I have a great respect for people who are in that position and have to decide. I have a cousin who, late in her life, in her 50s, she drove across the Peace Bridge. And this is the last section of it. It has 13 stories about people I've known. And she, from Buffalo, and she got out of her car and she stepped into the river and went over the falls. And everyone was so angry. And although I was sad and wished that she had found a different route, I also thought, this was your choice and you saw it through and you're gone, so I'm not going to be angry with you for this choice. And I wrote a song many years before she did this, because as I wrote these stories that end the book, I thought, whoa, I've known a lot of people who've considered this. And this song is called Niagara Falls. I've lived my life in scenic spots, from the Rockies to Gaspé. I've seen the northern lights both on and off. I swam in Hudson's Bay. I've entertained in igloos, from the Yukon to the Pole. I sprayed graffiti on the Great Wall. I saw through the black hole. I was bored by Xanadu. I've seen Mount Rushmore more times than I care to recall. But it's not a lost horizon after all. Slowly I turn, step by step. My throat dries up and I lose my breath at Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, where they call me the Maid of the Mist, 'cause that's where I got my first wet kiss, at Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls. Now I don't expect to ever wed, but long before I'm good and dead, I'm gonna spend someone's honeymoon in a cheap hotel, in a sleazy room by Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls. Well, some folk, they jump into Niagara Falls, and although it's sad, I can't recall a more sensational suicide, a classier way to decide to die, at Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, a wonderful place for you to be. Marine land and game farm. Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls. Thank you very much.
I didn't expect another musical act today. Thank you so much, David. You are the Mad Bent Diva. Thanks so much for your reading, and thanks very much for your book. And David's book is, if you don't have a copy, of course, we've got plenty of copies for you. David's is the best deal of the day because his book is $21.95 and $15 at the counter. So everybody should be going home with a copy of his book. Thanks very much. Oh, by the way, I love the cover. David sent me the manuscript. I fell in love with the manuscript, and then he sent me the cover picture, and I said, it's a reindeer in Christmas garb. And I said, I've got to publish this book just because of the cover image.